If you are a blood sport fanatic, you won't be able to remain indifferent to this story. The movie begins in New York, where Michael Rivers lives, a martial arts expert who has achieved everything and is on the verge of retirement. He devotes himself to passing on his knowledge to his daughter Bree, who, although a bit impatient, begins to mimic her father's moves. After the day's lesson, Michael sees his wife Samantha at the cemetery. Even though she has long since left him, her spirit remains ever present. That is Michael's secret weapon. His wife is always with him. Motivated by this memory, Michael enters his last official tournament, facing opponents determined to thwart his retirement. However, these are just pretenses, as Michael defeats his adversaries with ease and advances to the final fight. Despite falling to the ground several times, he rises again. Thanks to his daughter's support, he manages to reverse the situation and secure victory. Among the spectators, a man watches him intently. Ron Hall, a promoter who sees great potential in Michael. That night, as Michael celebrates his victory and receives congratulations from his colleagues, he promises Bree that this will be his last tournament and that he will hang up his belt the next day. Before leaving, Hall approaches him with a business proposal. Interested, Michael decides to send his daughter home in a taxi, even though she wanted to return to his side. In the conversation, Hall praises Michael's career and reminds him of his days as the Bloody Rivers. He then invites him to an underground tournament in Bulgaria, where the world's best fighters compete for a prize of $1 million, a true no-rules comet. The offer sounds tempting, but Michael remains faithful to his promise of never fighting again. Disappointed, Hall makes it clear that he will depart the next day in his private jet, leaving an empty seat in case Michael changes his mind. Back at home, Michael tries to tell Bree about Hall's proposal, but he soon realizes that he is speaking only to his own reflection in the mirror. There he finds a message written in red: "We have your daughter. Get on the plane." Faced with no other option, he has to head to Hall's mansion in Bulgaria, where he encounters other fighters who look as disturbed as he does. Finally, the promoter arrives to welcome them to his comet, explaining that some accepted immediately, while others needed some persuasion. At that moment, a man launches an attack on Hall for kidnapping his wife, but Hall's men neutralize him with gunfire. Such are the conditions of the Kumit. The winner will take home $1 million along with his kidnapped family member, while the losers will be lucky if they manage to leave alive. Hall also warns them not to bother informing the local police because they work for him. They must fight or die. Michael faces the undefeated Draco, who has the peculiar habit of executing his defeated opponents. After the presentations, the fighters are sent to their rooms, where Michael meets Chris, one of Hall's employees, with whom he had a misunderstanding in the past, reason for which Chris limps. Concerned by Michael's questions, Chris mentions Lauren, the only one who knows Draco's fighting style. Meanwhile, Damon Spears, a fighter whose wife was kidnapped, arrives in town under the pretense of buying his training clothes. Once he is away from Hall's guard, Damon goes to the police station to report the underground tournament. Upon hearing his case, Detective Dobrev informs him that they are already aware of the comet, but there is nothing they can do since Hall controls the underworld of the city and honest cops like Dobrev are very scarce. Back with Michael, Chris takes him to the gym to meet Lauren, a cleaner who was once a fighter in the Kumit when it was a prestigious tournament attended by the world's best fighters. But everything fell apart with Hall's arrival, who began eliminating his rivals thanks to his wealthy family that covered up his crimes. When Lauren refused to fight against him, his wife was murdered and his daughter kidnapped. And to this day, Lauren does not know what happened to her. That uncertainty keeps him working for Ron, while also waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. Michael assures him that this opportunity will come if he helps train. After his frustrating visit to the police station, Damon returns to the mansion determined to save his wife, Shauna, who is being held in a cell along with others. Meanwhile, Michael begins rigorous training under Lauren's supervision, who makes it clear that he will have to endure hell if he wants to find Draco's weaknesses. Although he struggles at first, Michael gradually assimilates the teachings of his new master. As Michael trains, the other fighters gather in the gym, while Draco approaches them with his usual amiability. Noticing Michael's absence, the giant intrudes into his room, making it clear that if Michael wants to rescue his daughter, he must defeat him, and no one has ever been able to do that. While taking a breath of fresh air, Michael meets Damon and Leah, a female fighter whose sister was also kidnapped. Sharing the same motivation, they decide to form an alliance with the single goal of taking down Ron Hall. Unfortunately, Hall has eyes and ears everywhere and reminds them that the lives of their loved ones depend on them not deviating from the plan. Back to training, Michael focuses on mastering his body and finding calm amid the pain, while Draco unleashes his fury on his sparring partners purely for fun. It will take immense strength to bring down this titan, so Lauren introduces Michael to Julie Jackson, the former sensei of Draco, who is willing to help him defeat his best student if there is any way to do so. Julie recounts that she met Draco when he was a child and helped him escape a troubled environment for a time. She considered him like a son. But Ron Hall entered his life and seduced him with money and power. Now, Julie recognizes that Draco has become a monster, and monsters must be stopped at any cost. Armed with Julie's teachings, Michael faces even more intense challenges. His strength alone is no longer enough. He must unite his body, mind, and spirit. 2 days before the Comet, the fighters prepare for the battle of their lives, showcasing their best skills. The big day arrives, and Michael steps into the arena of the tournament, surrounded by rich snobs and underworld mobsters who delight in the spectacle. Draco faces Kurt in the first bout, a nimble and eccentric guy who only cares about the money. At that moment, Hall announces his special guest, Julie Jackson. Though Draco did not expect to find her in Michael's seat, upon seeing his former sensei, he remembers the respect he once had for her, even bowing before her. At the sound of the starting whistle, Draco sweeps the floor with Kurt and breaks his neck in a final display of brutality, while the other fighters watch in horror and the spectators roar with excitement. In the following rounds, the true contenders separate from the mere aspirants. Among them is Marcos, a friend of Kurt's determined not to let his death go unpunished, while Damon demonstrates that age is just a number by elegantly defeating his opponents. Speaking of age, Master Lee is a clear example, a veteran martial arts expert who only pretends to be old. Leah is the only woman in the tournament, but that does not diminish her motivation. On the contrary, it drives her to strike even harder on her turn. Michael then faces Pollen, an Asian fighter who challenges him to beat him repeatedly. Although Pollen seems to take little damage, in reality he has suffered greatly. Thus ends the first day of the Comet, promising that tomorrow will be much bloodier. That night, Damon lies awake thinking that Draco will be his rival. No matter how much he tries to convince himself otherwise, deep down he knows he cannot defeat that monster, which means he will not be able to free his wife. For this reason, he seeks to form a pact with Leah. Whoever is eliminated first must rescue the other's family member, taking advantage of the fact that the guards will be distracted by the Comet, assuming, of course, that they manage to get out alive. After his defeat in the tournament, Master Lee meets his end at the hands of Devon, a fierce African fighter who uses him as a punching bag. The next fight is not far behind. Draco defends his title against the challenger Marcus, determined to strip him of the crown. Unfortunately for Marcus, Draco puts him to sleep with a solid blow to the face. Then Hall allows the audience to decide Marcus's fate, and of course everyone wants to see more blood, just as Draco prepares to carry out Marcus's sentence. Michael lunges at him, preventing Marcus's assassination. The enraged giant is forced to contain his rage for the tournament. In the following bout, Damon and Leah face each other but strive to inflict as little damage as possible. Damon is the first to fall, and Leah receives the order to execute him. However, she decides to leave the ring, ignoring Hall's warnings when her turn comes. Michael then faces a capoeira fighter who uses the ground to his advantage, making it impossible for Michael to get back up by the end of the match. Hall reveals his right-hand man, Wolf, to Michael, explaining that his guests have heavily bet on Draco's victory, since his most likely opponent is Michael. Wolf storms into Michael's room and slashes his arm while wishing him luck for the next day. In parallel, Marcus heads into the city to report the kit to Detective Dobrev. This time, he has something that can convince the detective, despite having to suture his wound. Michael does not feel ready to fight until Lauren reminds him that the lives of his loved ones depend on him. He cannot give up now. In the tournament, Leah faces Draco and demonstrates that even that monster can suffer, but of course, in the end, the champion remains the champion. In this case, Hall spares Leah's life in the other semi-final. Michael faces not only Devon, but also the pain in his arm, which forces him to rely on his legs in the preludes to the final battle. Meanwhile, Leah and Damon head into the mansion's basement in search of their loved ones, alerted by a guard. Wolf intercepts the fighters in the basement as Michael faces Draco. Finally, Leah and Damon confront Wolf, and with the help of the prisoners they free from captivity during the fight, they manage to defeat him. In the midst of the battle, Michael sees his daughter among the spectators, which distracts him and allows his rival to land a blow that sends him to the ground. His daughter gives him the motivation he needs to rise again and come back even stronger, worthy of Bloodsport, and just to be sure, she even kicks him again after Michael's victory. Then Dobrev and his men burst onto the scene, catching Hall by surprise, all thanks to Marcos, who reveals himself as an undercover cop. In his attempt to escape, Hall is intercepted by Loren, resulting in the fight they never had. In the end, Loren emerges victorious, but that is not enough. He should kill Michael for what he did to his family. However, Michael indicates that it is not worth it, as Marcus needs Hall to remain alive in order to arrest him and eventually find Lauren's daughter. As the families return home, Julie takes charge of her former student, Draco. Sometime later, we see Lauren training when he receives a surprise visit from his daughter.